Hi there, Smart Drivers. Rick with Smart Drive Test talking to you today about the story of actually getting my driving instructor's license, at least the first step in getting my driving instructor's license. In Ontario, you're certified to be a commercial driving instructor, and I had a lot of difficulty getting a job after that. So it took me a couple of years, and then I went back and actually got my instructor's license. So we're going to tell you that story today. Stick around. We'll be right back with that. Hi there, Smart Drivers. Welcome back. Rick with Smart Drive Test talking to you today about actually getting my driving instructor certificate in the province of Ontario. And like much government bureaucracy, it was a bit odd that you're certified to teach people how to drive a tractor trailer unit or a bus, but you then have to get licensed to teach people how to drive a car in the province of Ontario. And I'm not sure whether it's still like that, but it was in the late 1990s when I got my instructor's license. And after getting my certification to teach people how to drive truck and bus, I had a lot of difficulty getting a job because many places just wouldn't hire me without my actual instructor's license. They felt that I didn't have enough experience. So, probably wasn't an old codger like many of the truck driving instructors in the industry. Just being a bit sarcastic there. So Ryan is here from Saskatchewan. Janet's here from Ontario. Matthew is here as well. So if you're tuning in, let us know where you're tuning in from in the world. Let us know if you're working towards your license, whether your license test has been postponed because of the current crisis that we're dealing with, COVID-19. And interestingly enough, Carrie is here from Minnesota. Interesting enough, I was looking at the headlines on my phone this morning. I don't read the actual articles, but I do look at the headlines. And actually here in Vernon, British Columbia, where I live, we had a protest against the restrictions of COVID-19, which I'd be interested to know how much media attention that got around the world because, Vernon is a very small town in the world. Probably a little bit like Twig, Minnesota, I would assume. So there we go. Drex is here from Brooklyn. Awesome. So we got some people here from the East Coast and in the Big Apple, the boroughs there and whatnot. Farron is here from South Africa. That is brilliant. So we got a few people here. So I've been talking about specific topics about CDL license and driving as a CDL driver, as a truck or bus driver in North America. Yesterday I talked about weights, and the day before that I talked about border crossings and those types of things. So Corey's here from Manitoba, and Nita's here from Antigua. Wow, we get quite a group of people from around the world, so that's really awesome. And, I also talked about driving hard. Like I ran really hard when I was driving truck, but, I could only do that for a few months at a time. The time that I drove New York City, for example, I only drove New York City for 6 months. And then I got pulled off of it because the boss and I got into a tiff. But I was running, I would leave out on Sunday, go down, drive overnight. It's about an 8 or 9 hour drive from Cambridge, Ontario, where I was working out of, down to New York City. And as I mentioned, I was hauling multiple drops on a truck, LTL freight, less than load. And so I would spend all day Monday delivering, sleep Monday night, wherever I ended up, usually in Jersey, New Jersey, the state of New Jersey. Somewhere along the turnpike there. And then I would finish delivering on Tuesday. I would drive back Wednesday, back to Cambridge, usually empty because they usually didn't get me a load. Come back on Wednesday, pick up another load, go back, deliver Thursday, finish delivering Friday, back home Saturday morning. Usually I went home, picked up new clean clothes, more groceries, and went back out Sunday. And I did that for 6 months. And I was, you're exhausted because you're not really sleeping much at all. And Kevin, my friend, how are you? Drex, I'm 17, working towards my license. That's awesome. And we can definitely talk about that and talk about any questions you may have about your test being postponed or getting your license or what you should be doing while we're all waiting for the test centers to open back up again and get going here. So, as I said, I only, because I ran so hard during the times that I was working, and just ran myself silly into the ground because I'm a type A personality and that's what I do. 1996, I went on a bicycle tour. I just like left for 8 weeks and went on a bicycle tour. And in Scotland, I rode 800 miles through Scotland on my bicycle. I'd seen people doing it in Northern Ontario, and people riding their bicycles across Canada, which I thought was just the coolest thing to do. So in 1996, I went off and did that. And a friend of mine was actually supposed to meet me in Scotland, and I'd never, other than driving truck into the States, I hadn't been out of Canada up to that point. And so I booked a ticket. I got my bike ready. I was ready to go. Borrowed camping gear and that sort of thing, and off I went to Scotland. And 2 days before I was supposed to go to Scotland, I got in touch with my friend, and he said, "Oh, I'm going to India. I won't be here when you get here." So there was some serious reservations on my point about going to Scotland and riding around on my bicycle and camping in a country I'd never been to before. And I basically said to myself, if I don't go now, I'm never going to go. And so I did go, and had some great adventures cycling around on my bicycle through Scotland, and learned heaps and heaps, about people and the goodness of people. I met lots of people who gave me rides, put me up, bought me tea, bought me drinks, and those types of things. So 1996 was it was a tough point in my life, and the trip to Scotland reaffirmed my faith in humanity. It really did reaffirm my faith in humanity, and that's what 1996 was. So, and at 1996 to 1997, I was really trying to find ways to get off the road. So in addition to taking a couple of months off and cycling around Scotland, I had tried other jobs, because that was the benefit of working for a personnel agency. I could go and work wherever I wanted to, which was really great. And I tried a couple of times. I tried these city jobs. One city job I worked for, they delivered alcohol to the local liquor shops, and basically went and picked up the tractor, drove out to the yard, which was about 4 miles away, picked up a trailer full of booze, drove to the liquor shop, which was, another 8 miles away, and spent the rest of the time hand bombing the booze off until noon. Drove to another place, hand bombed the rest of it off. So I spent all day hand bombing booze off the back of a truck, and went back, and I think I was making $15 an hour or something. And driving back in the afternoon at about 4 o'clock, and dispatch called me up, and they said, "Oh, we got another load for you." I said, "No, you don't. You really don't." I said, "You don't need a truck driver. You need a lumper." Lumpers are people that they toss freight off the back of the truck. And and the other thing was, I was working 3 times as hard as I was driving over the road, and I was only making about $120 a day, whereas over the road, I was, in the 1990s, I was making $250, $300 a day. I was making 3 times the amount of money running over the road. This is why people, truck drivers do over the road work, is because the pay is commensurate with the amount of work, being away and those types of things. Whereas running around town, you're home every night for sure, and you get paid by the hour, you get paid for everything you do, but you're still you're still doing a lot of work. Matthew Quinnell, I'm doing my professional log truck driver course right now. They have a course for logging. Matthew, I wasn't aware of that. Which company are you taking that through? All right. So 1997, I finally, I had also tried opening a personnel agency, which was basically an agency. It's an intermediate agency that hires truck drivers and then farms them out to the industry. We didn't have enough capital to make that go, so it didn't really go as planned. We abandoned that. And then finally in 1997, I decided I was going to take my driving instructor's license and see if that was worked. But like, a number of things that I've done in my life, I didn't get the right counsel. I didn't do enough research, and sort of went about it through the back door, out the front door, around the house, and back in the back door again, before I finally figured out how to become a driving instructor and become gainfully employed. And my friend Wheelman is here, unloaded in Sur de Portugal on this trip with 40,000 kilograms. That's a lot of weight. 42 liters to the 100. I'm going to have to figure out what that is, 42 liters to the 100. Because that sounds like really terrible fuel economy. We'll figure that out. I'll finish telling the story here. Loya, how are you, my friend? I'm doing really well. And yourself? Awesome. So I signed up for the course in the Ontario Safety League, which is an organization in Toronto. I went down there with a colleague of mine, and him and I took the course together. Unfortunately, what happened, the certification program to teach people how to drive truck, it it makes me wonder in retrospect why they even have the course. Because for me, a lot of it was just reiteration of what I already learned and what I already knew. We had to take the air brakes course again because we were expected to teach air brakes, some information about trucks and those types of things, but we never got in a truck. We never saw a truck. We were just, becoming and driving instructors, and it was, I think it was 3 weeks of coursework. And so that was, interesting. And then after that, I came out in 1997 trying to get a job as a bus and truck driver. Couldn't get a job. Finally, I went to an employment agency. I think it was 1998. It was 1998. 1998, I went to an employment agency, one of these nonprofit places in town. And there was a 6-week course that they offered on how to write resumes, how to write cover letters, how to do cold calling. And, in retrospect, in the courses that I've taken in my life, it was one of the best courses I ever took on how to cold call, how to write resumes, how to write cover letters. And I was calling around because one of the things you had to do, was to cold call every time you come in during the day. And I was cold calling the local transit authority, and I thought to myself, well, the chances of getting a job here are pretty far-fetched. But cold called them, and one of the things when you're on the phone with a company and you say, listen, do you have any openings? And they say, no, we don't have any openings right now. And one of the things they taught us to say was, well, can I drop off my resume? And they would say, yes, you can drop off your resume. All right, okay. Can you tell me who's responsible for the hiring? They told me who the operations manager was at Transit Authority and those types of things. So I got all dressed up because you got to realize that when you go and drop off your CV and your resume, you're getting a little mini interview because you're going to meet the person who potentially could be hiring you. So I got all dressed up, wearing a tie, went in, asked if the person was available to give them my CV and resume. Person wasn't available. I said to them, listen, I said, can I wait for the person? And yes, yeah, you can wait, no problem. And I waited for 2 hours. I waited for 2 hours for the person to finally come out and give them my resume and application. And sat there, waited, person came out, 30-second little thing. It's like, hi, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm applying for, here's my resume and application. And they said, thank you very much. They called me back the next day and they said, listen, we might have something for you. What happened in 1998, it was when we had the transition here in North America to low floor buses, for accessibility for people on wheelchairs and people with mobility devices and those types of things. And the operations manager didn't want to write a curriculum to teach bus drivers about accessibility awareness. Working with people with disabilities, people with low vision, people with hearing problems, people who had to be, how to restrain wheelchairs and those types of things on the buses and whatnot. And so they asked me if I would write the curriculum and teach the pilot course and teach the instructors how to do that. And I said, yeah, I'll do that. So basically I got 6 weeks of work at the London Transit for, I think I made $8,000 for 6 weeks work, which was probably more money than I'd ever made. And, I worked pretty hard, and it was, and I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun, and learned a lot of, stuff about meetings and working in union shops and those types of things that I previously did not know. So it was a tremendous experience, and it was really bolstered my confidence in finding a job and those types of things. And it was kind of the start of moving off the road and doing jobs as a driving instructor or a safety officer. It didn't come right away that I started working in driving schools. I had applied for the driving school in London, Ontario Truck Driving School, and they wouldn't hire me because I didn't have my driving instructor's license. And they, what was the piece that I'm looking at? Right. Part of the certification for driving instruction is that I took the driving instructor's course, but in Ontario, it's 2 pieces. It's in car and it's in classroom. And until you actually do the in classroom portion, you don't get your license. You just get a certificate. And so I had to go back to the Ontario Safety League, and I had to do the in-classroom portion of it, and that's finally when I got my license. And so in 1999, I'd moved to Ottawa. I was working for a flat deck company as a safety officer, worked for them for a spell for about a year. Things, went sideways. Life changes as it does. And they laid me off, and I had an opportunity to go back to the Ontario Safety League and get my classroom portion, which was 3 weeks, and went back to Toronto, did my 3 weeks of in-classroom portion, and the next year in 2000, I went back to university to finish my degree at university, and was managed to get hired at the Ontario Truck Driving School because now I had my license, my driving instructor's license, plus all the certification, plus I had more driving experience, driving truck and those types of things. And so that's how I got my driving instructor's license. And also, when I was in Ottawa, or when I was in Toronto rather, the agreement was I was on unemployment insurance, and unemployment said to me that they would continue to pay my benefits and they would pay for the course, but I had to figure out accommodations while I was staying in Toronto. So in Toronto, I stayed at a hostel downtown, and where Ontario Safety League was way out in Mississauga, and I had to take they do have trains out there, intercity rail, and the subway and those types of things. But eventually I met somebody in the course who was driving me out there, and long story short, at the hostel where I was staying, I met my future wife, the woman I would marry in 2000. And so, yeah, it was a good experience. It was a lot of fun. And I kind of got to know Amelia at the hostel and talked to her and those types of things. And she'd helped me quite a bit with homework and quizzing me and whatnot. And so the last night we were there, the guy that was driving me back and forth, I said to him, I said, listen, why don't you invite your girlfriend? We'll go out for dinner and I'll buy you dinner to say thanks, because he wouldn't take any money from me for giving me a ride back and forth to the class every day. And so I invited Amelia along with me, and Amelia came with me. We went out to dinner, and he showed up. Trevor, he showed up for dinner, and he didn't bring his girlfriend. He was a really nervous kind of sort of guy. And he basically stayed for about a half an hour, ate his dinner, and then said goodnight and left. And that was kind of the beginning of how Amelia and I met and how we got married. So, Matthew, it's a new thing. Our CNC College has just started, so I guess we are the test subjects and still working out all the kinks in the course. Oh, tremendous. CNC, what does CNC stand for? I'll have to look that up, Matthew. Bet they got excellent instruction. Yeah, they did. I wasn't always great at being a driving instructor. There is a learning process in terms of being in the vehicle and helping people out and whatnot. Wheelman, still remember my driving instructor from Sudbury in 1985. Very professional. Awesome. Robert, neighbor started working at TTC as a streetcar driver. Says average weekly salary is $91,000. Wow, that's pretty crazy. Loya, very lecture for all driving experience for everyone, sir. Yes. Basically, this is just a daily thing that I'm doing, Loya, to kind of, fill in the time while we're all sitting at home and telling you driving stories and those types of things. So $91K, that is a lot of money. That is way more than $25 an hour. Does anybody know what $91,000 is in an hourly wage? That's a crazy amount of money. So, anyway, if you go over to my autobiography on my website, I talk about some of the conversations that I had with other truck drivers, some of the conversations I had at the Ontario Safety League. We had the instructor who was teaching the course at the Ontario Safety League, Bob, was a retired school teacher. And one of the things he said to us was that in the 20th century, the motor car killed, injured, and maimed more people than soldiers sent to war. And, that was kind of when the light bulb went on for me, was, when that statement was made. The other interesting question that has continued to, drive my research and my interest in traffic safety was a conversation I had with a truck driver while I was sitting waiting. And this story is on my autobiography page over at the website. He's saying, on the 401 in the 1990s, the speed limit was 100 kilometers an hour. And I said, no, the speed limit's 118. You can do 118 kilometers an hour and the police will never pull you over. and he was adamant that it was the posted speed limit. And of course, I'm thinking, do people obey the law because they fear the law or because they respect the law? I found out that people obey the law because they fear the law. It's very it's very rare cases that people obey the law because they respect the law. And actually, for everybody who's watching, if you're watching on the replay, just answer that question for me and just type fear or respect in the comments there, and let me know whether you obey the law because you fear the law and its consequences, or you obey the law because you respect the institution of law and what it's trying to do in terms of create order in our society. So either type fear or type respect in the comments there about which one of those is. So between those two pieces of information about having the conversation with the other truck driver about what the speed limit was on the 401, whether it was the actual legal posted speed limit of 100 kilometers an hour or whether it was the fact that you could drive 118 kilometers an hour. And then in combination with that, the fact that I found out in the 20th century that the motor car killed, injured, and maimed more people than soldiers sent to war, those pieces of information have continued to, get me to do what I'm doing here on the website and teaching traffic safety and helping people out. And I mean, my friend Tim, who runs Smart Drive BC, same information. He wrote an article and he's talking about these, like, why are people so consumed with what's going on with COVID-19, but traffic crashes have killed, injured, and maimed far more people. And the thing about traffic crashes is that these will persist. Whereas COVID-19, we'll find a vaccine for this and we'll get this under control and this will be over in 6 months. And it won't happen anymore. But people still continue to be consumed by COVID-19, but people have a completely cavalier attitude about traffic safety initiatives, distracted driving. People are like, people kind of give a cursory nod to distracted driving. But, when it comes to texting and driving and talking on their phones and those types of things, people think and believe that texting and driving or talking on their phones while they're driving or doing whatever else they're doing in their car, eating, putting on their makeup or whatnot, most people believe that this is a victimless crime, right? It's like committing tax fraud. It's a victimless crime. Nobody gets hurt. I'm driving down the road and, I take a sip of coffee and I'm not distracted driving. It's a victimless crime. Nobody got hurt. So what's the interesting piece about all this? Why is that? Why are we so consumed about COVID-19? Why are we so consumed about shark attacks? Why are we so consumed about tornadoes if you live in Tornado Alley in the United States and Texas and Oklahoma and places like that? But people are not concerned about traffic crashes. So these are the interesting questions that I ponder. Ryan says he read my autobiography yesterday. Auto means written by the person who it's about, as opposed to biography. Wheelman, I hear this rumor constantly in these parts that American big rigs use mainly gasoline. Is that true? No, that's not true at all, Wheelman. Big trucks are all diesel here. They're all diesel. Speed limiters in Europe for 90 kilometer an hour trucks. Yes, and we have speed limiters here as well. Wheelman, actually, there's a couple of places, Ontario for one, that have limited trucks to 100 kilometers an hour. Drex, you can't control someone else's actions. And yeah, that's very true. You can't. The only actions that you can control, Drex, are your own actions, right? But do your actions impact other people? And how do your actions impact other people? Because distracted driving could potentially impact somebody else. And I find it interesting. I mean, here's a perfect example of our civil rights, driving, and information. And I talked. I was a bit concerned about this a little while ago because when I was teaching at the university, I used to teach a law and history course, and we had the coroner come in, and the coroner said, up until a couple of years ago, that police, to investigate a crash, could plug into the black box on your car, basically the computer on your car. And I said to the coroner, I said, they can't just do that. I said, what is the difference between a police officer going into my car and plugging into my black box on my car? I said, that's like them coming into my house and plugging into my computer and just downloading information on my computer. They can't do that. And actually, I got some clarification from a police officer who was a crash investigator. And he said, no, we can't do that without a warrant. They have to get a warrant to be able to plug into the black box on your car. The other piece about that, what was the other piece? I lost my train of thought. Epic. Rick, speaking of obtaining an instructor's license, do you need to apply one for commercial vehicles that includes a medical card or not? U.S. and Canadian trucks are limited to 65 miles per hour, some 70 miles an hour. Yeah. Commercial licenses. Epic, it depends in terms of the instructor's license where you are and which province or state that you've got your instructor's license in. Here in British Columbia, you are designated a class of license and who you can teach, right? Motorcycle, for example, is another classification of license. If you get class 1 driving instructor here in British Columbia, you can teach everything except motorcycle. So there are different classes of license that you can teach. And sometimes when you get a driving instructor's license for car, you can just teach car. You can't teach truck. And even now, they've recently segregated it out here in British Columbia as well, so that you can get a license, an instructor's license, just to teach bus driving as well. So that's another thing that happens here. Mary, I respect the law when it comes to speed limits, since living around where elk live, some spots where you can't see them, and if you're going any faster than the speed limit, when you come up on them, yeah, you're gonna hit them. Carrie, seems like a victimless crime unless there's a traffic crash caused. And yes, and this is the interesting point, Carrie, that you make there, is that a lot of times, I think the other reason that we don't give due cause or due concern to traffic crashes is because we know as traffic safety professionals that most cars only crash once every 14 years. So once every 14 years is a very long time between traffic crashes. So is it going to hurt somebody else or what? We don't know. Mary, if you're going over the speed limit coming up on those elk, it's trouble. Yes, it is definitely going to be trouble. Krishna, hi sir, had it. How is situation COVID-19? COVID-19 continues here. We still have the economy shut down and things are not moving very quickly. Wheelman, did you ever experience a violent jackknife occurrence? No, never had a violent jackknife occurrence. They were always mild, and usually when it was slippery out. I did have the experience of doing it on a skid pad, though, Wheelman. They actually had the trailer chained up so it wouldn't come right around, but they would get you around a curve on a set of pylons on a wet surface, get you to pull down on the trailer spike, lock up the trailer wheels, and the trailer would start coming around, which was great fun. And basically what they were teaching you is that if the truck and trailer goes into a jackknife, essentially get your foot on the throttle and just keep powering through to pull the trailer out. But a couple experiences that I did have with minor jackknifing in a tractor trailer unit was freezing rain in Philadelphia. Come around a curve like this, looked in the mirror and saw the trailer out in the, on the shoulder of the road. It was kind of sideways coming out, but I just kept my foot into it and pulled out of it. Another experience I had was in a bit of light snow. I was going home, come down a bit of a hill to a traffic light, and I'm sitting there waiting for the traffic light. It went red, and I'm sitting there watching the traffic light, and all of a sudden I'm looking over and I can see the traffic down. I had a little window on the other side, in the passenger side on the truck, and I'm looking down. I'm thinking, well, that's kind of odd that there's no traffic beside me, because there was usually always traffic pulled up beside me. And so the light turns green, look up, look in the mirror, and the trailer is out across the other lane of traffic, and that's why there wasn't any cars beside me when I was sitting at the traffic light. Pretty funny. Drex, the only thing that confuses me is right of way at stop signals and measuring distance when changing lanes. Yeah, Drex, what you want to do is you want to look at the video on changing lanes. Just go on to the my channel here and look at the playlist and find the one on changing lanes, and that'll help you out. As well, there's a video on right of way, and that'll help you out as well. If you have any other questions, Drex, just send me an email, rick@smartdrivetest.com, and I'll be happy to help you out, send you the videos that you need for that information, and we'll get you going there. All right, so that's basically it. 1996, 97. One other story. The week that I went and got my instructor's license, and most of the people Krishna, help me. My request, what's up? I want to speak personally, please. No, I don't give out my phone number. Krishna, if you want to ask me a question, send me an email, rick@smartdrivetest.com, and we can talk there, okay? And if I don't know what your situation is, Krishna, but if you're overseas, you're living in another country, and you want to drive truck here in Canada or in the United States, you have to get a work visa first. You have to see if you can apply. So go on the immigration site and see if you qualify for a work visa. You got to get that first before you can come here and drive truck or whatnot. So the week before I went for my instructor's license, I ended up running the most number of miles that I ever ran when I was at the height of my goofiness in terms of driving truck. The previous weekend, I went to New York City, dropped a load in New York City and came back because it was only one drop in New York City. And then Sunday, I went out and I left for Texas. And I went to Dallas. I had a couple of 3 drops in Dallas. I had 4 drops in Houston, went to Houston. And then they sent me to Laredo, Texas to pick up a load. Anyway, I didn't make it to Laredo, Texas in time for the load and missed the window for picking up the load in Laredo, Texas. On Friday, I was in Laredo, Texas. I had to be back for Monday for the course. And so I got to Laredo, Texas. They sent me back to Louisiana to pick up a load to come back to Cambridge because there wasn't any more loads in Laredo, and I'd missed the load in Laredo. And I also learned what flash flooding was in the middle of the desert. And my girlfriend was with me at the time. And basically, we drove 1,800 miles in 48 hours in a 100-kilometer-an-hour truck because all these trucks were governed at 100 kilometers an hour. We stopped in Louisiana, Athens, Louisiana. I remember that. And picked up the load in Athens, Louisiana, and I basically drove back. I got 2 hours sleep on the way back to Cambridge, got back on Sunday, and then went to the course on Monday. And that week, and if somebody had told me this driving a truck, if they said, oh, I ran 5,200 miles in 1 week, I would tell them that they were probably embellishing. But it did happen. I ran 5,200 miles in 1 week. And it was funny because 10 days before that, I met up with a set of team drivers, and the team driver said to me, oh, we had a good week last week. We ran 6,400 miles between the two of us. And the very next week, I ran 5,200 miles by myself in a 100-kilometer-an-hour truck, which is absolutely insane. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. And now that I'm a little bit older, my back is giving me some trouble, so I wouldn't suggest that you do this. And this is why I never really lasted at long-haul trucking because, I was a type A personality, and I would do all kinds of great, crazy things and drive all kinds of crazy hours. And I was never a lifer. I was not one of these people that could work 8 hours a day, take my 10 hours off, and then go and drive another 8 hours, come home on the weekends and those types of things. I just wasn't a lifer. All right? Okay. All right. So, Epic. Car and truck videos are so helpful in the province of British Columbia. Is there a special license needed to drive RVs? Because states that border New Jersey, such as New York City and Pennsylvania, need RV license. What we have here, Epic, in British Columbia is if you have a recreational trailer that weighs more than 10,000 pounds, then you have to get an endorsement to tow that trailer. Same with heavy trailers. You have to get a heavy trailer endorsement if it's more than 10,000 pounds. Those are the only requirements we have. The other thing is if you have an RV unit that is fitted with air brakes, then you have to get an air brake endorsement to operate that unit. Okay, those are the other requirements. Krishna, if you want to drive truck, you need to start with Canadian immigration here in Canada, and you need to apply for a work visa. That's where you need to start, Krishna. Okay, before all the rest of it doesn't matter. You need to get a work visa first, and that's your first step. So go to the Canadian immigration site, look up for work visa, and that's what you need to do in order to come to Canada and actually work here. All right. So we're going to leave it there for today. Unfortunately, no bonus. The kids aren't here this week. They're at their mom's, and it's just too complicated to get them on. I might see what I can do. Maybe I can get them on and talk to you about some bonuses and what they're doing and that sort of thing because they're out of school and mom is homeschooling them as well. So, so we'll see you tomorrow at 11 a.m. again, Pacific Standard Time, 6 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. If you have any questions, send me an email, rick@smartdrivetest.com. And I'll be happy to help you out. and get you going. And if you have any questions about being postponed and COVID-19 and all this craziness that's going on in the world, drop us a note and we'll be more than happy to help out. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have an awesome day. Bye now.